February 1959. The Ural Mountains, Soviet Union. 9 experienced hikers set up camp on a mountain slope. They had done this before, many times. They knew these mountains. They knew the cold. They knew how to survive. By morning, they were all dead. The tent was cut open from the inside. Not unzipped, not opened, cut. Someone took a knife and slashed through the fabric from within, in a panic, in the dark, in minus 30 degrees. They ran into the forest, in their socks, some barefoot. No jackets, no gear, no flashlights, nothing. The temperature that night was minus 28 degrees Celsius. A human being cannot survive more than 1 hour in those conditions without proper clothing. They ran anyway. 5 bodies were found on the slope, frozen, scattered, their faces pointed back toward the tent, as if they had tried to return and didn't make it. 4 more were found 2 months later, buried under 4 meters of snow, and this is where it stops making any sense. Some had broken ribs, not 1 or 2, multiple fractures on both sides, the kind of damage you see in car crashes, in industrial accidents, caused by enormous crushing force. But their skin was untouched. No bruises, no cuts, no marks. Whatever broke their bones left no trace on the outside. One had a skull crush like it had been hit by a vehicle. Same thing, no external wounds. And one of the girls, 20 years old, had no tongue, no eyes, no lips. The Soviet government investigated, classified the files, and closed the case with 6 words: an unknown compelling force. That was the official answer. No explanation, no suspect, no cause. Just unknown, compelling, force. 65 years have passed. The files have been partially declassified. Dozens of researchers have studied every detail, and nobody, not one person, has been able to fully explain what happened on that mountain. Tonight, we go through everything. Every person in that group, every day of their journey, every body, every wound, every theory. And at the end, I will tell you what I believe. Let's begin. Who they were. Most people picture unprepared tourists, students who got lost. Wrong. Every single one of them had years of serious expedition experience. Frozen river crossings, blizzard camps, navigation with no GPS, no modern gear, nothing but skill. If you had to pick 9 people capable of surviving a nightmare in the Ural Mountains, you'd pick people exactly like them. They still didn't make it. Igor Dyatlov, 23, the leader. An engineer who built his own gear from scratch. A custom stove for extreme cold, his own radio equipment. People who knew him said he never panicked, ever. They found him on the slope, alone, facing the tent, like he'd turned back to help the others and never got there. Zina Kolmogorova, 22, strong, fearless. The photos from the first days of the trip show her laughing, completely in her element. There was something between her and Igor. Neither ever said it out loud. They found her near him, same slope, same direction, like they were trying to reach each other until the very end. Rustam Slobodin, 23. He played mandolin by the fire at night. Found on the slope with a fracture in his skull. Investigators said it wasn't severe enough to kill him. Hypothermia was the cause of death. How he got the fracture? Nobody ever answered that. Yuri Krivonishenko. He worked at Chelyabinsk 40, a classified Soviet nuclear facility. Remember that detail. Alexander Kolovatov, 24, physics student. Previously worked at a classified research institute in Moscow. Found in the ravine, the position of his body suggested he was trying to shield someone when he died. Lyudmila Dubinina, 20, the youngest. On a previous expedition, when the group hit a dangerous river crossing, she went first, no hesitation. They found her in the ravine, 10 broken ribs, 5 on the left, 5 on the right. The medical examiner wrote that injuries like this are consistent with a high-speed car crash, and she had no tongue, no eyes, no lips. She was 20 years old. Not one theory has ever fully explained what happened to her. Nikolai Thibault Brignol, 23. Massive depressed skull fracture, the force required, consistent with a vehicle collision. The skin above the fracture was completely untouched. Semyon Zolotaryov, 38. A World War II combat veteran, Eastern Front. He joined the group last minute, replacing someone who dropped out. He had tattoos that researchers have spent decades trying to decode. Possible criminal connections, possible intelligence connections, nobody's proven either. And here's the detail I can't stop thinking about. When everyone fled the tent that night, minus 28 degrees, no boots, no real clothing. He grabbed his camera, not his jacket, not his boots. His camera. The film was developed. It showed nothing but darkness and blurred shapes that have never been identified. 9 people, all experienced, all prepared. They sang around campfires. They wrote in their journals about how beautiful the mountains were. Then something happened, and all 9 of them ran into the dark. Day by day, January 23rd. They board a train in Sverdlovsk. Spirits are high. Zina writes in her diary that night, "The energy in the car is electric. People joking, people singing. Nothing unusual, just 9 people about to do what they love." January 26th, they reach Vizhai, the last real outpost of civilization on their route. Beyond this, no towns, no roads, no people. Locals warn them about the mountains, about how fast conditions can turn up there. The group listens politely. They've heard warnings before. January 28th. Yuri Yudin can't continue. His joints are inflamed, his legs are giving out. He has to turn back. That decision saved his life, and he knew it for the rest of his life. He hugged each of them, watched them disappear into the snow, never saw any of them again. February 1st, day 10, morning. The group moves up the slope of Kolatsiakol, Dead Mountain. Visibility is dropping, weather is getting worse. They decide not to push through to the other side tonight. They'll camp here on the open slope and continue in the morning. It's not a reckless call. Experienced hikers make decisions like this all the time. Igor records the campsite in the expedition journal, handwriting neat, calm, practical, location, weather, plan for tomorrow. Last entry anyone in the group ever makes. 9 people climb into the tent. They eat. They joke. Someone writes a final headline in their group newspaper. Then they go to sleep. Then something wakes them up. And 9 people who knew exactly how to survive in these mountains make a decision that guaranteed their deaths. They cut through the wall of the tent, and they run. What they found? The group was supposed to send a telegram when they returned to Vizhai. It never came. Days passed, then a week, then 2 weeks of silence. By February 20th, the families demanded action. Soldiers, students, volunteers, aircraft, all sent into the northern Urals to find 9 missing hikers. February 26th. The search team reaches the slope of Dead Mountain. The tent is still there, from a distance, almost peaceful, almost normal. It was not normal. Inside, everything. Backpacks, food, warm coats, boots, personal belongings, neatly packed exactly the way experienced hikers organize their gear. Nothing taken, nothing stolen, but the tent had been cut open. Not through the entrance, through the side wall. Long, deliberate slashes through thick canvas made from the inside by people who didn't have time to find the zipper. These were experienced campers. They knew exactly where the entrance was, even in total darkness. They cut through the wall anyway. That single detail tells you everything about their state of mind that night. Outside, footprints, 8 or 9 separate trails, all leading down the slope toward the tree line, over a kilometer away. At the tree line, a large cedar. Its lower branches snapped off up to 5 meters high. Bark scraped raw, consistent with someone climbing in a hurry with no proper grip. At the base, a fire, barely enough branches to call it that. And 2 bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. Nearly naked, no coats, no shoes. Doroshenko had burns on his hands and the soles of his feet. He had pressed himself directly against that dying fire, as his body was already shutting down. Between the cedar and the tent, 3 more. Igor Dyatlov, Zina Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin, scattered across the open slope. 5 bodies. An awful story, but on the surface, an explainable one. Panic, extreme cold, slow death. That was the official version for nearly 3 months, because 4 members of the group were still missing. The snow hid them all winter. It wasn't until May, when it finally began to melt, that searchers found the last 4 in a ravine, 70 meters from the cedar tree, buried under 4 meters of ice at the bottom of a frozen stream. And when the bodies came up, every assumption the investigators had made collapsed. I've spent a long time with this case, and I don't think there's one clean answer, because I don't think one thing happened that night. I think something triggered a sudden, overwhelming panic, something that hit all 9 people simultaneously and gave them no time to think, only to run. I think at least some of the physical trauma, the shattered ribs, the fractured skulls, wasn't caused by falling or fighting each other. The injuries are too severe, too specific, and too internal for that. And I think the Soviet government knew more than they said, not because of any single dramatic piece of evidence, but because of the pattern, the classification, the missing files, the phrase unknown compelling force, which is not how governments describe accidents. That's how governments describe things they need to make disappear. Does that mean a weapon killed them? Maybe. Does it mean something stranger? Something that doesn't fit into any of our current categories? Also, maybe. 5 theories, no answers. 65 years, Soviet investigators, Russian prosecutors, forensic scientists, physicists, amateur detectives who have spent more hours on this case than most people spend on their careers. 5 theories keep coming back. None of them explain everything. Theory 1, avalanche. The official version. In 2019, Russian prosecutors reopened the case and announced their final conclusion. An avalanche struck the tent. The group panicked, fled into the dark, and froze to death. Simple, logical, and full of problems. Theory 2, military testing. This is the one serious researchers keep returning to. In 1959, the Soviet military was actively testing experimental weapons in remote areas of the Ural Mountains. Not speculation, documented historical fact. Parachute mines, experimental rockets, prototype weapon systems, all tested in isolated regions, exactly like where this group was camping. And it would explain why the Soviet government classified this case. Theory 3, infrasound. No conspiracy required, just physics. Under specific wind conditions, air moving across a curved mountain ridge can generate infrasound, sound waves below the range of human hearing. You can't hear it, but your body feels it. Pure terror with no visible cause. Your body screaming that you're about to die, while your eyes see nothing. This would explain why 9 experienced, rational people made a decision that defied all logic. Theory 4. The Mansi. The indigenous Mansi people considered Kholat Syakhl sacred, forbidden to outsiders. Soviet investigators pursued this immediately in 1959. The evidence killed it just as fast. No footprints around the tent except the group's own. No signs of a struggle. No external human presence anywhere on that slope. Most researchers consider this one closed. Theory 5. Paradoxical undressing. This doesn't explain the panic. It explains why several bodies were found nearly naked, or wearing clothing that belonged to other members of the group. Paradoxical undressing is real. The dying person feels an intense wave of heat and starts removing their clothes while freezing to death. It's horrifying. It's also one of the only details in this entire case that modern medicine can explain with confidence. One avalanche that doesn't fit the terrain. One military cover-up that fits disturbingly well. One natural phenomenon that explains the panic but not the injuries. One indigenous attack the evidence rules out completely. One medical phenomenon that explains the clothing and nothing else. Not one theory explains everything. That's the part I can't get past.